Hello and welcome to this video on the Kafka gateway. So I'm going to be going through the typical flow here where I start off by speaking initially about protocol mediation and then jumping directly into the Kafka gateway. So protocol mediation in Gravitee is the process by which you are taking an event stream or something that produces a data stream and placing the Gravitee gateway in between that and your consumers, and then exposing those data streams through more common web-friendly protocols. For example, in the image that you're seeing, you're able to take an event stream and expose that over HTTP through a REST interface. For example, your producers can post requests and your consumers can get requests. You can also use different technologies as well to consume these APIs. So you can use WebSockets for persistent connections to your data streams. You can use webhooks and server-sent events as well. And so we'll talk about the protocol mediation in just a second and show you exactly what that looks like in the product. The other piece as well is the Kafka gateway. So sometimes you don't always want to use, different interfaces for communicating with your Kafka clusters or your RabbitMQ streams or any other event broker. Rather, you might want to consume Kafka over native Kafka. And so meaning you can utilize the native Kafka framework to consume data streams from your Kafka upstreams altogether. And the way we would do that in Gravitee and benefit from having some mediating party in between your cluster and consumer is by placing exactly that Kafka gateway, which is the Gravitee gateway, directly in front of your Kafka cluster. And it does not matter where that Kafka cluster lives, what the distributor of that Kafka cluster is. It can be a local Kafka server, like an Apache Kafka. You could also use something like a Confluent Cloud, or any other Kafka distributor for your clusters and servers altogether. And by placing the Kafka gateway in front of your Kafka upstream, you are able to now expose a lot of the governance capabilities in Gravitee to your consumers. So, for example, we can do things like virtual topics, where we're able to now map topics on the gateway level to real topics that exist on your cluster level. So, for example, we'll talk about this in a second. For example, you might have message filtering at the gateway level. You might have access control and different quotas. You might want to do a mediation across different authentication mechanisms. So for example, going from SASL SSL to perhaps something like JWT authentication. And so we can do all of this directly from the Kafka gateway, simply due to the fact that we are now able to expose those data streams through Kafka. So let us jump directly into a quick example. I have my console here, and I have what is both a producer and a consumer. I'm going to open up these APIs here. So this producer, if I open up the entry points, this is exactly how my consumer is connecting to my backend, and that backend being on the gateway level. And you can see that we have an HTTP post entry point type, meaning you're able as a consumer to connect to this API using a post method, and you're calling it on the gateway by this listen path. And the endpoints is the other, second most important thing here. This is how Gravitee is connecting to my Kafka cluster. In this case, again, it's on Confluent Cloud. I'm simply passing in my Bootstrap server here, which is just the host name followed by the port name. And then in my configuration, you can see that I'm passing in my Jazz config. And this is a username and password, Jazz config here. And all I'm doing is telling Gravitee which topic to produce data to. My consumer is the exact same thing. I'm simply just calling it a different name here, subscriber. And the endpoints, you can see that I'm also passing in the exact same information, my host name and port, and then as well as my Jazz config. Now that's it. I'm effectively able to now go directly into Postman, and I can open up my let's see here, WebSocket APIs, Kafka subscribe demo, and I can connect to this. Now that I'm connected to my gateway, as you can see, and there is a Kafka subscriber demo, meaning that's the name of the API that we're connecting to, we're able to now go into our event streaming and produce some information. So let me say this is March 9th, 2025. Firas has a message for you. So my name is Firas has a message for you. My message is the date. Funny enough. Okay, so we're able to send that message. If I go into my WebSocket connection and I open up that recent message here, you can see Firas has a message for you. March 9th, 2025. It's exactly what we sent at 6:22. Now to confirm that this works, of course, we're able to pop into our general data, open up our messages, and we should definitely see our message here. Now the cool thing is that Gravitee is what is sending our messages to our Confluent Cloud cluster, which you're going to see in a second here. But ultimately, and the most fascinating thing, is by placing Gravitee in between both of these different tools, between my consumer and between my Kafka cluster, I'm able to do a lot of different customization here in governance. Let me see exactly why we're not able to send to our Confluent Cloud cluster here. I'll send a couple more tests. 3 bytes per second, messages. Yeah, definitely producing messages. There they are. So Confluent Cloud was just being a little bit finicky there, but we can definitely confirm that we receive these messages. Now, we are sending and receiving data through REST, not through native Kafka. So we want to be able to now say that we want to leverage a lot of the Kafka capabilities, like virtual topics and message filtering, and looking at things like specific authentication, mediation. We want to be able to do all of that through Kafka comms. So let's close a lot of these tabs here and close this bad boy. We're going to close Confluent. We don't need that. And we should be all right here. Okay. So what am I doing? Well, I'm currently running my instance of the Kafka gateway directly through this Docker Compose. And this is located, and it will be located on GitHub. I can share the link to it. But ultimately, this is going to allow you to run the gateway with Kafka enabled. And you will absolutely need a specific license that is going to permit these Kafka capabilities in the platform on top of passing it through this environment variable. And then we're passing in very important pieces of information. So for example, our local Kafka client is stored in our client config here. So for example, our client is going to connect to our gateway either through a keyless plan, or passing in, of course, our trust store and security protocol through SSL here. But ultimately, if I was passing in something like a Jazz config, I would be passing that in through my properties file here as well. So same information, except I'm passing in my Jazz config. This is actually going to be relevant to an API token that Gravitee is passing here. But in any case, we are definitely able to do API authentication. We'll talk about that in a second. And the README produces a lot of context around exactly what we're doing here. And so just to get things started, let me go ahead and show you exactly what it looks like to stand up an API, a Kafka API in Gravitee. So if I go to create a new v4 API, I'm going to call this Firas, and 1.0.0, this is a Kafka API. Now I'm validating my API here. I'm going to choose Kafka protocol, and this is obviously going to allow our gateway to act completely as a broker to our Kafka clients. And now here we're going to pass in our host. And so our host is simply just going to be appended to the actual host name listening on the port for our Kafka gateway. So again, this is, if you guys remember the protocol mediation, this is how our consumer is connecting to this specific Kafka API on the gateway. All right, so now that we know that this is essentially how our consumers are connecting to our Kafka API, this one specifically in Gravitee, we can just go ahead and give this any name. So again, this one's going to be called foo, listening on this host name, and this will make up our Bootstrap server to our consumers. And then for endpoints, again, I don't want to confuse you by saying Bootstrap server on the other piece, because that's how customers or clients are connecting to the gateway. This is how the gateway is connecting to your actual backend, right? Because this is us in the process of locking down your backend cluster. We don't want customers, clients to know about this altogether. So let me go into Visual Studio Code and I'll grab my Bootstrap server here. So if I just find out, it is Kafka 91. There it is. And so again, this is literally your backend that Gravitee is speaking to. It could be a Confluent Cloud Kafka cluster. In my case, it is a local Kafka, Apache Kafka client. So we'll go ahead and select our keyless plan. We'll save and deploy this API, and we'll just make sure everything is deployed perfect. Now we'll open up our terminals here, and I'll just clear everything and make it nice and simple for us to see. So let's go with producer. Okay, so what this command is going to allow me to do is I'm simply just going to use an existing client or Kafka client library to do something like a produce command or receive or create or write data. I'm passing in my Bootstrap server, and this is really important here. This is the Bootstrap server from Gravitee, right? foo.kafka.local. And this is basically my gateway URL on port 8082. It's my gateway URL. It's locally how my gateway is running. That's how I'm referencing it through DNS settings. And then my actual Kafka API is foo. And then all I'm doing is I'm simply passing in my client properties. Again, the keyless plan here is really important because that's exactly how our client is connecting to the API. There's no authentication. We're simply just referencing our JKS or trust store through SSL. So if I was, and again, using API keys, it's as simple as publishing our API on the portal, making a subscription, and then getting the MD5 of the API key as the username, and the password is the raw value of that API key. So let's go ahead and start this proxy off. I'm going to create my consumer, perfect, and this is foo.kafka local. We're passing in our consumer, and the most important thing is our topic. So I'm going to just do Firas as topic, and that way we're receiving and sending to the same cluster. So we'll go ahead and send that, and I'll pen my consumer. This is a message from Firas. See if we receive that. Oops. Firas message. I think the offset is usually the first one. Hold on, am I even on? Oh, oh, clearly the demo gods aren't with me, so I'm obviously reading literally from the wrong topic. Underscore topic. There we go. All right, so now if I say this is a message again from Firas at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you can see that we're receiving all of this at the source. Now again, I'm essentially getting this from producing and consuming through the gateway, but I want to make sure my backend or my lockdown Kafka server is also receiving this data. So I should be able to go to localhost, I think, yes, 9003. If I go to my topics, you can see we've got a whole truckload of topics here. Firas underscore topic is the one that we were sending messages to. Oh, again, I go to Firas dash topic underscore topic messages. Here's our messages. So Firas message, let me just make another one. March 9, 6:39 p.m. It's received. March 9th, 6:39 p.m. Let's wait for that to come in. And it should be received in just a second. Let's do this first topic. March 9th, 6:39 p.m. There it is. So we are absolutely successfully sending and receiving messages through our Kafka gateway. It's amazing because, to go back to our slide deck here, the benefits here in being able to do what we can't do in protocol mediation is essentially all of these policies, right? I mean, we've got things like virtual topics, right? What exactly is a virtual topic? Well, if I go to my policies and create a general keyless flow, right? A flow is just a group of policies. We talked about that before. And I create a policy in my interact phase. So basically all interactions where my client is communicating with the gateway, not my Kafka server. It's the gateway before that. So we can add a topic mapping policy here that basically has many different topics that we can hook into at our backend, essentially all of them. And on the client side or at the broker level for the gateway, we can say that whoever's connecting, I guess here, whoever's connecting to our gateway or pushing data to our API on the gateway, they can pass in any topic that doesn't actually exist at the Kafka level. So we're essentially masquerading topics here. We can say that, right, so now we can go ahead and put in a real topic name. So this is essentially going to refer to here, what am I essentially sending to that does not exist on my Kafka cluster? And so we can say something like external data. And at the broker side, this could be like external topic. So this has to exist on the actual Kafka cluster. It needs to exist there on my backend. But on the client side, from just at the gateway level, I'm going to say that you can send data to a topic called external data. Even though it doesn't exist there, Gravitee is going to send this to a real topic that exists. So let's go ahead and save this. Go ahead and save. And we've got our producer, external data. And by the way, I've created our topic there, external topic. So again, just to confirm, I've created the actual broker side topic, external topic there. So we can go ahead now and open this up and say that this is a message to external data and external data topic and external data for us. Okay. Now, if we go to our Apache Kafka, again, remember, we're sending the data to external data topic, so it should actually create a new topic called external data. But because we are mapping this to external topic at our Kafka cluster, we can open up external topic in messages. This is a message to external data topic. It's exactly what we sent to this topic, and Gravitee is mapping it to another one in the backend. This is really useful for internal and external use cases, and for completely locking down your Kafka cluster so that no one knows what the topics are called. They only know what you are allowing them to know on the gateway level. So let's see what other policies we can make use of. In fact, the ACL one is a fantastic one here, where we can actually extract things like, let's go to this topic here and say that we want to limit the amount of access to all of our topics, or we might want to limit access to this topic to be read-only, and so on and so forth. So what we can certainly do is I can say that this is literal, meaning you only have access to the general data topic, right? For us, only has access to the general data topic. And in fact, you can read and write, sure. Now, on top of that, we can say that for us has access to all resources, but perhaps all resources are only read-only. We might also want to say for us has access to, let's say, all resources, write-only. We could say that it's got to match a specific pattern and capture it. If that pattern is captured, we might want to extract information, like is there metadata in the request that shows that you're passing in a topic or something like that. And so let's go ahead and test this out. Literal general data read write. Perfect. And we go ahead and publish this. Now, given the fact, Yep. We did not mean to stay connected. Sorry. Let's go and try and push to a topic called external data. Am I able to do this? No, I'm certainly not. And this is purely because of the fact that topic authorization failed. We don't have access to write to that topic. However, let's try and go to general data. And you're going to see that we can absolutely go ahead and publish to this topic. So super cool stuff. We're limiting access with authorization purely from the Gravitee perspective. So that is us locking down these essentially topics. And we can also see what access we have altogether. If I was to grab this command here, list topics, go back in here and see what topics I have access to is the general data. I might want to go back into my configuration here and go ahead and publish this API. So let's just deploy. I always like to deploy things before I make a next configuration. So now that this is deployed, we can now go ahead and view this API. Whoops, that's not the one that we want to go to. 885/next. Perfect. So now we can see the Firas API here on the portal. And that's by proxy of us being able to now publish it. So we can open up this API. We can certainly go ahead and upload something like async API spec. That's something that we can certainly do as well. Async API, test async spec. Next, let's do, I believe I should have. All right, so I've got a async API spec here uploaded, and this one is called Streetlights. Took me a second to find that. Thank you, run LLM. I knew it was there somewhere, I just couldn't find it, but there is a GitHub repository with some examples for async API spec. And yeah, this is going to populate everything in terms of the scopes and what we can access, the type of security that we're allowing here, what type of messages we can allow, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and save and publish. And then now we can go ahead and refresh our page here, open up our documentation, and we can absolutely go ahead and see everything is being populated. So very cool with the async API spec being visualized here. And now the most important thing, of course, is, well, because the fact that my API is currently undergoing a default keyless plan, meaning there's no authentication here, so it doesn't really do me any justice to be able to get the authentication that I care about, right? Or securing my API or my Kafka cluster or my Kafka API at the gateway level. So what you would typically want to do is you would want to go in your API, you would want to add something like an API key mechanism, and then simply enough, once that is added and your consumers subscribe to that API here using that API key, Gravitee is actually going to provide you with the exact information that you are going to need from a properties standpoint in order to access your API. So for example, if I go into VS Code and I go into API key here, you're going to get your Jazz config through Gravitee. It's going to pass in the MD5 value and the API key. And it is as simple as taking that, passing it here, and then making your request. That simple. And so the portal is going to facilitate all that for you. And you can absolutely go ahead and provision things like JOT tokens as well, at your base. And it's essentially what you're passing in your Jazz config in that case would be your client ID and secret, and then going through the OAuth handshake, getting your OAuth token, and then accessing your Kafka server. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate that. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know.